you doing? Working hard.
Yeah, working hard.
Wow.
But kind of have a big job that's coming to a close in the foreseeable future.
Is that good?
That's very good.
Okay. So you can rest. Yeah. Relax.
Yeah.
Relax and work hard. Cool.
A gift. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Because then you can know that's coming. That's cool. Okay, dear friends. How was that working with your mother of this life to find gratitude? That's one question, but anything you want to start with? Sometimes it's challenging. Babaloo, he'll give you back the microphone.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in gratitude for my mom, she was very kind for my brother and myself, and for a lot of the time, my dad was gone on the road in his particular career, so she would try to work with two wild boys, and she had neighborhood friends that she would see, and they were good buddies, and so they tried to raise all of us wacky boys. There were 6 boys within 3 houses, and so they really tried to help us stay on track when we did all kinds of wild things, from burning lawn chemicals in the garages, burning down fields, almost burning down the neighborhood, a few other assorted things just because we were sort of mischievous. I also really appreciated when, because I used to weigh a lot more than I do now, and at 21, she helped me. All I knew how to cook was hamburger helper and fried potatoes. And I needed some help, and so she helped me when I went to Weight Watchers, learn how to cook and teach me, which finally I was open instead of Wholesome Hostess products and other things. So that was one of her great things. And my parents also, both my mother and my father, supported me as I'm gay. So in that day it was difficult coming out and coming to school and having that experience. And so they were both very, very supportive. My mother struggled for her being a head nurse. She got attached to different drugs and medications to lose weight, speed and other medicines, and being a head nurse, she had access to all the drugs. And so that's one of the patterns that harmed her life. And I think my mommy, now I understood that she really was very generous. Not wisely generous at times when she would take us to restaurants and things and charge them on a charge card. But she had a kind heart. She also had she loved nature and would pick up rocks. Her butt was always up in the air as she was reaching down to pick up rocks on the ground. It's my memory of her, and I have all her rocks out in front of my house now. So watching her struggle with her drug and alcohol problem was the saddest part. But overall, she had so many wonderful qualities that she exuded. The challenge with my mom is she didn't know how to care for herself. She overcared others, but didn't know how to care for her. And so she taught me that. And so I really appreciated that, because I have pictures in my bedroom of my mom and my grandparents also. And if our grandparents, both my mother's and my father's grandparents, if they weren't there, our lives would have been really severely impacted. So I'm so grateful they were there. And so those are some of the things I thought about when you were mentioning that. that they really birthed and continued to birth me. I was thinking of members of this even Sangha. There's even someone sitting in this room here, several people who took me to physical therapy things when I needed a knee replacement. They birthed a new knee. So I have ongoing mothers also continuously. So I was just noticing that. So I appreciated your topic. It was very, very good.
Yeah, you're welcome. I find that it's so important to, well, the teachings just say, I was reading some things today by Ringo Toko in Daring Steps, which is a marvelous book of an overview of the path here. And he was saying, you know, we have to engender these experiences of gratitude, loving kindness over and over and over in our minds, because it's not our habit. You know, we also need to know what is my habit. You know, often I can tell the habit of my friends. I was with a friend yesterday, and we're very close. We can talk very directly, and I said, "You're doing Eeyore again." You know Eeyore? Eeyore's in, what's the little bear's name? Winnie the Pooh, the little bear. Eeyore's always, you know, down there. It's so sad. It's very bad. That's his actual voice in the cartoon. It's very bad. I'm very sad. He's a little blue donkey. So I recognize the Eeyore in me, but we need to each find, like, you know, what's my shtick? You know, for someone else, it's just irritated. I'm irritated. Those people are so stupid. I'm irritated. So, and then engender the whatever contradicts that: patience, kindness, and just spaciousness. Oh, okay, I feel like that right now. I'm having those thoughts right now. What are they made out of? Show them to someone. You can't. So how is it we get so solid with them? So thanks, Bob. I was also thinking this morning about, or this afternoon, thinking about being here in Mothers and opening time up. And I thought, you know, my mom died 10 years ago, and she was almost 102. I love that about my mom. And she lived in her own house all the way through. Unbelievable. When she was 100, she used to bake bread for us. And she could hardly move. And she would be toddling toward the oven with this bread on this, you know, this yeast-raised bread on a tray, kind of headed that way. I'd be like, oh my God, will she make it? And she did. A lot of it was just sheer willpower, I swear. But I was thinking, she died 10 years ago, actually this next June. And I was thinking, you know, according to Buddhist worldview, anyone who's 10 or younger could be my mom, my mom's rebirth. So those little ones I'm down there with, it's very interesting to think, what if that was just my mom in last life, and now she's a, you know, a 4-year-old little boy running around having a great time. Huh? Yeah, kicking me in the shins or throwing the ball at my head, the soft Nerfy ball. Yeah, it's one way to play with this, you know, play with the Buddhist worldview. We don't have to adopt it hook, line, and sinker. And for most of us, we don't experience it. Some people do experience past births. They actually do. I'm not one of them. But I don't. But I can. I look at it this way. Okay, I do what my teachers taught me from 24 years ago. You know, I fought with them and resisted and whatever, but I could see they knew something I didn't know. And they were a kind of human being that intrigued me. Not your average bear, I always say, which is funny because they're people. Not your average bear person. And then I would think and watch how they get that way. And they'd say, well, I studied this, I contemplated this, I meditated on this. So you try some of them. You don't have to even try very much. And you all know because you keep coming back here. That builds what the Dalai Lama calls faith based on reason. The reason is your own experience. Therefore, you can trust that in a way. Due to Dharma, is my mind clearer than it was pre-Dharma? Oh my God, yes. It's not nearly as clear as I want it to be. But when I think back 24 years ago and the amount of confusion I had about how to proceed in the world, it's gotten a lot better. So that builds the confidence then to practice and do the practices. And once for me, it's like stepping stones. So I did my first retreat. It had good benefit. It was really hard. I hated being quiet and sitting. But you know, after 4 days of that, go home and go, wow, I'm kind of calmer, you know. Then a 9-day retreat, yeah, I'm calmer. Very hard work. It's not like, oh, I sat there all blissed. You know, I definitely wasn't blissed. But based on the experience that builds the confidence in this path, then I'm more willing to try on the worldview. Does that make sense? So these teachers are saying, do this, there'll be good effects. I do it, I get good effects. Then they say, you know, there's no time and space the way we think about it. It's much vaster, it's much emptier than that. Not empty like a void, but empty of the solidity we impose on it. So then I go, I don't know if that's true or not, but I could adopt it and see what happens to my mind. It's what Lama Michael's always talking about, adopting this view that all beings have been my mother, which comes out of many, many old texts. The most famous, Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva. And that's the way we build the sense of connection and compassion that our self-centeredness is pulling us away from. The self-centeredness is always pulling away from that. It's not true. I need to deal with my own stuff first. I'm alone in the world. Whatever those messages are. So it's a sense of building faith, another word for confidence, but never based on just a sense of believe this because some person says it. Buddha said, don't do that, because you could get fooled by the fool's gold versus the true gold. So when you come on something that looks like gold, you have to pound it, burn it, chew it. He said all this in the sutra, and make sure it's real gold. That's how we have to be with Dharma concepts and teachers. I think there's a question.
And that kind of reminded me of a question that came up for me earlier, which I think I've asked several times, but it's always a different answer.
Ask again.
Could you draw a connection between the enlightenment of all beings, between the absorption of calm abiding and in order to benefit all beings?
Are you asking how do those two connect?
Yes.
How do they connect for you? You keep doing it, so let's start there. Or do they connect? What do you see? What
I
do you
keep
feel?
doing it, but I keep stop doing it too. And because I feel like that I often forget whatever that connection may be, and it's a theoretical connection. I guess the cynical side of me, will say, how is, Pat Kirkuff sitting there supposed to, and
Help anyone connect.
Enlighten all, free all beings from their particular suffering.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, gosh, there's so many ways in, and that's why you always get a different answer, but keep asking. So, tonight, I feel like answering this way, or this is what's coming. Calm abiding is the most common, fundamental, foundational method of all Buddhist paths. Why? Because we have to be able to focus. Now, even a basketball player has to focus. A carpenter has to focus, right? If I'm driving a nail and I'm looking over there and driving it that way, not going to work. Yeah, right. Lose a finger. So that is actually all calm abiding is giving us in a very basic way. It's a practice of concentration. So the three higher practices, they're called in the Mahayana path, which is this path, are ethics. So we have to calm our lives down. You can't have a wild life, get drunk on Saturday, have sex with strangers, crash your car, and then come in here Sunday morning and have a calm mind. It's just not going to happen, right? So I'm being extreme, but basic ethics are really important. Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't engage in unwise behavior, and don't engage in drugs and alcohol to the point of intoxication, because that causes you to do all the rest of the things. Speak badly, lie, cheat on your partner, So ethics is the first of the higher practices. So 3 higher practices. And the second one is concentration. And that's where calm abiding, still so not used to this being right here, calm abiding fits in, right? So we need to abide calmly, be able to put our mind on an object, keep it there calmly, unwaveringly, relaxedly. And it only moves when we decide to stop. Now they say people like the Dalai Lama can do that for 3 hours straight. And now that's not me. I'm struggling for 3 minutes straight, seriously. So we get our ethics in order, we get our calm abiding, our concentration, and then the third one is the wisdom. Ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So calm abiding sets the basis for the wisdom, which in this lineage is called insight. Okay, the other word for it is vipassana. Not to be confused with a different kind of vipassana from the Theravadan side that is just called vipassana. So here we have this calm abiding shine. We have insight called latang. And we move into that with things like, okay, in your calm abiding, get steady as you can. You've got your focus. Your body's not moving. Your mouth isn't moving. Your mind is calm. Of course, it's going to move a little, but it can get really calm. Then you launch a quick thought to see if you can ping into the nature of the mind. So a thought might be, a car goes by and you're kind of calm. You barely hear it if you're really, deep in your shine. You might not even notice, but let's say you notice a sound and you can say just quickly, that inside my mind or outside my mind. Then you drop the question. You don't want to go into, well, inside, outside, because now you're back in concept. What you're aiming for is an experience that kind of pops our normal la-la. So another one, there's a whole set of questions. Another one might be, where's this experience happening? Meaning the whole thing. Where's it happening? Don't think about it. Just ask. Get a sense of the whatever, and then go back to calm abiding. This slowly moves us into realizing the nature of the mind. When we fully realize the nature of our own minds, Buddha nature, then we're fully awakened. Then we have big effect on others, right? But in the meantime, okay, so in the Mahayana, they say that takes 4 countless great eons, six countless great. Yeah, they say how many? 3 uncountable eons. 3 countless great eons. So it'll take a little while. But there's an encouragement within that, which is at some moment you may have gathered enough positive potential from serving the Dharma, study, good works, practice, that you get something sudden flash, sudden enlightenment it's called. Then that has to be stabilized. Quite a number of people get a flash, maybe you're outside and you feel like, I'm going to describe these, but you can't describe them. They're indescribable. You try and tell someone and it's already ruined, you know that. But there's something that occurred that's very different. And you have a flash. Then there's some time that has to get stabilized. And then high-level bodhisattva lives in that state all the time. That state realizes, I'm just describing concepts here, okay? Y'all get that. But concepts are good. They're like a blueprint. That describes the helpful concept of appearance, emptiness. Everything's appearing. And by appearance, it means all 5 senses, actually 6 senses. Appearance doesn't just mean your eyes. Appearance is your sense, smell, taste, touch. Oh, that's sense. Hearing. All of them. And then mental. We have a mental sense. Our mental sense kind of in our way, because I touch this, I barely feel what that direct experience is. because I'm already making a story. It's my petcha table, my petcha table. But that's not what this is. Okay, that time I felt something smooth because I just let it be. But my petcha table, I don't think about smooth. Mine, right? And I like it because it has these little things down here, my cough drops. So the mental sense is in layers. In the grossest mental sense, it's very confused. It's all the stories we make up. I, me, mine, you over there. I like you, I don't like you. I don't care about you, you know. It's just such nonsense, but it's going all the time. So these insights, this insight, vipassana, latan, 3 words for the same thing, we kind of break out of that. And that's based on the calm mind. We have to get it calm enough. And we can break out and get a sense of that, wow, open space. But in the meantime, now I will say, so tricky, because I don't want to discourage anyone, but I will say that I think it would be rare for a person to get stabilized insight with the kind of busy lives we have, which is why we send people on long retreats. I found that the first 3 or 4 days of a retreat, all I'm doing is settling down and unhooking from all the, you could think of them as little wires hooked to you, family, son, husband, house, cat, friend, and you're just popping them off. And then after a few days, you get calmer. And then after a month, you get calmer. And then maybe everything riles up again. And then, but we need, that's why all of them, like Shantideva's, or the 8 verses of thought transformation, the last verse tells you to do all these things about loving kindness and emptiness and stuff. And then in the end, it says, seek solitude. This is not going to happen. What we're doing is really important, though, because we're doing what we can do in this life. And that's the other way to encourage ourselves, is open it up to other lives. Sometime in the middle of the 1-year retreat, I went to Lama Michael, and I was just like, I'm going nuts, in this 10 by 12 GABA, 9 hours a day. I'm barely out of here, and an 8-foot fence, and a 1/10 of a mile walk, over and over the same, walking like a little hamster. And he said something I wrote down, and I so remembered it. He said, well, Zopa, you got to practice now for your next life. I was not happy with that answer. What about this life? I want something this life. Yeah, so then you see, I want something to happen here, and therefore I'm not present with what is happening. There's a cat scratching at the door. So, I got it. I went back, calmed down. Then it was, okay, this is what's happening now. I'm frustrated. What's that feel like? That's how we get to know our mind. What does craving feel like? I was craving a different experience, some outcome. It felt terrible. I couldn't wait to get in and see him and get an answer. And then the answer was, go back and sit down and look at your mind and see that you're doing what you can do in this life for your next life, for your next life, for your next life. Because from a Buddhist worldview, these lives don't end. Now, from a Buddhist worldview, we may not take human form again. When we get to high level, we don't have to, unless we want to. Buddha mind is not confined by all this form. Buddha mind can use form. Can use form to help. And it's automatic help. It's not like, oh, I'd like to help Matthew, but I don't really know what to say. And then I said that, and then he thought that, and that wasn't helpful. That's how we do it now, and it's okay. But Buddha doesn't function. Buddha mind, which we all have, doesn't function that way. Have you ever had an experience where you just automatically helped someone? Two of you are nodding. You didn't even know, where'd that come from? I have one that I remember. I'd just come back from a short retreat, and I was on a Portland City bus, and I started to get off the bus, and a woman behind me had a stroller that she collapsed and a baby in the arm, and totally not thinking, I just turned and took the stroller. It was not conscious. It wasn't like, I should help, but I'm embarrassed. What if she doesn't want me to? It just was like that. Like you would do if you were with her. And what had broken down was no strangers in that moment. I was with her, so of course I would do that. That's more Buddha mind. I'm not saying I had any kind of fancy thing, but you get what I'm saying. It's more toward it, So that's what we do now, and we rejoice in those, and we stay with right where we are, And we, especially this lineage talks about drop all hopes, drop all fears. By hopes, they mean expectations. Just drop them. But I would also say, Pat, part of your question is, how can you feel when you're there that it's meaningful, right? Is that meaningful? Yeah. So
how can I develop the confidence?
So one of the things is much stronger and possibly a little time spent before you launch into your calm abiding on refuge and bodhicitta. Because when, like that little trick I said tonight, if your mind starts spinning, think, I'm doing this for my mother. So I'm just telling you stuff that works for me. I'll be sitting there doing shine. I'm feeling really great, but all of a sudden I feel like this is just for me. I'm just in this room alone. It's just for me. That guy out there pushing the cart down the sidewalk. I don't know what he's getting out of it. But then you need to create the meaning. You need to. So I think sometimes I stand up and I look out on my street. People are walking dogs. I have a very busy street there. Walking dogs, pushing carts in wheelchairs, all kinds of stuff. And then I go, okay, I'm going to sit back down for that woman right there. Plus my friend who's being infused every day because of one of those horrible bacteria. And then I can go back. You can also picture them sitting with you. One of the classic Buddhist ones is mother on my left, father on my right. So sometimes in the morning I go, mother, father. Then I put my sister, my 2 daughters-in-law, my 4 nieces. Then I put my dad, my 2 brothers, and my 2 sons, and my 3 grandsons. And it's like, okay, come on, you guys, we're doing this. So we need to keep it fresh for ourselves. We're the ones that become creative. It's not like the meaning's going to come from somewhere else. Right? So do whatever, I listen to a yucky news story and I sit down for I've got asthma, and this week a couple times I was able to go, wow, the people that got gassed in Syria couldn't breathe at all. And I'm like going, I can't, I'm struggling with breathing, but I wasn't being gassed by my own government. So it's like, bring them in your mind. Bring in whatever gives meaning. Your sister, Bring whatever gives meaning. And we have to, Ken MacLeod used to call it tricking ourselves. At the beginning, we have to trick ourselves into this. Yeah, we have to use our tricks, because our minds are pretty, you go on a very long retreat and you'll hit a time where you're going, man, my mind is a nutcase. And you see it more when you get out of the fray, because when we're in the fray, the busyness, we can always say, it's because my neighbor, this is one of my favorite ones, he has a lawn crew come every third day, a whole lawn crew with the blowers and the mowers. And I'm like, that guy's obsessed about his lawn. He's obsessed. And he is, of course. But my job is to go, Zopa, why do you care? Why are you freaking out? So, I sit there and try and wish him well. And
that's his suffering that he's dealing with, is the worrying about his lawn.
Yeah, and he can't quit it, and he's paying money. So one of the things I did, I love that you said that, it's his suffering. And I'm upset at his suffering. I want him to suffer a different way. Don't suffer that way. Suffer some way I like. So that doesn't bother me. So one of my tricks was, I've learned all these tricks from my teacher, especially Venerable Chidren, because she's very clever about about how you have to switch your mind and think different. So I was thinking, okay, what is he doing that's good in the world? Well, he hires a lot of guys that need work, and they're all over that yard 3 times a day, and I bet they get paid well, because he's a guy with some money. I mean, I don't know, I can't assume, but they get paid. And so I'm going, well, that's good. Thank you for giving those guys jobs or whatever, You just have to trick yourself into a accurate state of mind. What I just tricked myself was true, He is doing good. Those guys get a job, they go home, feed their family. Kids go to school. That's good, So we have to look deeply to see how when we sit all alone, it's a great meditation. Just keep asking yourself that question and find ways to answer it you really have to make it meaningful to yourself, or you'll stop. And that's what happens, we stop, because we can't. This culture, everything, like Lama Michael told us in our 1-year retreat, there is nothing in the culture we're in that encourages locking yourself up for a year in a 1-year retreat. Like nothing. And it's true. I mean, I would say my husband was the most encouraging, actually. I mean, he didn't want me to go, but he liked what Buddhism did for me. He liked my happiness. So he was the most encouraging, interesting. No one else was. Friends were like, yeah, okay. I mean, people at KCC were, but I'm talking no one else out in the big world. My mom thought I was in a cult. Was not happy. My son thought almost the same. I mean, this culture isn't encouraging you sitting each day. So you have to find why you do it. Yeah.
I don't much have a specific question, but I'd like to hear a bit more sort of about sort of the rarity, stable insight in sort of in this present age, because I've recently seen a habitual pattern that I engage in a lot, which is to see the Sangha and the people in it as kind of special, and sort of there being a quality to those people that somehow differentiates them from the people who are not a part of this Sangha, or who don't call themselves Buddhists. And I found that when that expectation is contradicted, I become very upset, and I sometimes treat this place as kind of like a filter, as if anybody who walks through that door is different from the people who don't walk through that door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's led to a lot of trouble in my life, because I make a lot of a lot of assumptions arise about the people who walk through these doors. And what you said sort of about the rarity of stable insight really kind of opened that window into sort of there really isn't a whole I just like to hear you talk a little bit about sort of like, the lack of difference between us, the people here, the people who call themselves Buddhists, and people who don't call themselves Buddhists.
Yeah, well, we don't know. We could be, one way to expand that, our view is, okay, here's a story from the Buddhist time. There was a person who said, he didn't claim to be a Buddhist, he just swept the floor all the time in the meditation hall. That's all he did. He was kind, he was nice, but that's all he did. And then there's someone sitting there, looking like a pretty high-level practitioner. But when the Buddha came, he saw that the floor sweeper was the one with the kind mind, the humility, the kind of personifying. Whereas the other one, like many of us, is confused about the form, like you got to sit like this, and you got to be like this, and you're always nice. You're so nice. You're so nice. And someone says something really awful to you, and you're really nice. But not in your own mind. You're not nice. You want to punch them. So, number one, we don't know who the bodhisattvas are. It might be the person sitting next to you, but it might be that guy that hires those people. And it could be the guy that's blowing the leaf blower for only 30 minutes. Not that I time it, but I have noticed. So it could be that one. So, but the other thing, your question
sort of like,
answers your own self. Let me get this one part. Is when we really need to drop judgments. And that's the answer that's inside your question. Buddhists are good and these other people are not Buddhists. Well, we're already into duality very deep, which is not Buddhism. The Buddha taught no duality, none, zip. So anytime we're headed towards making different other, we're off. So you already know that, or you wouldn't ask the question. But the hopes and fears thing, like you say, I expect people who come in here to be thus and so. Mm-hmm. Then they're not. Well, I watched my teacher do things that I was just like, I can't believe a Buddhist would do that. I can't believe it. Of course, I was very pure then. Now I know I'm not. So that's progress. It truly is. And one time I was so upset about it. I went to another teacher, a Zen teacher, friend of mine, and I said, my Tibetan Buddhist teacher is doing thus and so, and I'm so upset. And she said, the Zen teacher said, yeah, you're upset. And then she said, do you know that your teacher has only has a 1-point program for you? And I said, what's that? And she said, your liberation. She's not trying for anything else. And I saw that was so true. And she said, the other thing is you have to remember every person you meet is still human. So, they're going to do human things. The Dalai Lama was telling a story on himself. And I think really good teachers tell stories on themselves because they tell you, like, this is not some magical woo-woo thing, that we're doing here. This is like hard work, and we're doing it. And it takes a while, so patience is important. So he was saying that when he was being driven in some fancy car down some commercial street in California, and he was watching his craving rise for things in the windows, and especially they went past a watch store, a jewelry store, and he's all about watches, and he was just like salivating, and he started laughing because he saw it, he was like, now this is the Dalai Lama. In other words, those things still rise, craving and aversion. That's not the point that they're not going to rise. It's what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I've realized that I've kind of shut myself in this place, that rather than taking the teachings to heart and stepping out into the world and trying to and being more open, I've limited myself to the people here, and I'm not really sure what to do about that.
Well, you're doing it. The first thing is see it. The second thing is, for you, don't be hard on yourself, okay? Because you'll start making yourself perhaps wrong about it. It's just a stage, and then that we all go through. My team is the best.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And that's okay, because you want to have warm feelings here. This is your community. But yeah, again, just one quick story and then we'll be done with time, but done with time. They say out of time, but I said done with time. What's the difference? We're never out of time, we're done with time. But one of my very first, I think it was the first 9-day retreat I had with Venerable Chidren, the final one-on-one interviews, I went in, and as soon as I saw her, I burst into tears, and I didn't know that was going to happen, and I said, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. I just love how I feel. I feel so, we're all doing this, and the world out there is, and I got to go back to my executive director job where my staff hates me. And I was crying. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, I remember every time I used to have to leave the Dalai Lama, because she's been around him a number of times. She said I would cry and cry. And I said, so what did you do? And she said, he told me, your job is to take what you got here out and share it. That's what this is for. This is not to rah-rah team. So that's what we do. So just take your kindness out there. Then come back and get recharged and take it out again. That's what we do. Okay? Thank you for your wonderful questions. this virtue, may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. One last word, perhaps last. Every morning, almost every morning, I try to read for about 15 to 20 minutes in a Dharma book. And I think that's very important for these kind of questions, because the information's in there, and especially the one I'm rereading now, the Daring Steps by Ringo Toku, who was here. He's such a pleasure to read because he's clear and he goes step by step through this path, all the way through the parts I'm talking about, Shine, La Tang, the four thoughts that turn the mind, the four immeasurables, then into the Vajrayana. He gives a very complete blueprint of what goes on here. So, and I can't read very much of it each morning. It's very powerful. I read about 4 or 5 pages, and then I go, wow. So even you read a paragraph a day. I find when my mind is too low, picking up a Dharma book, read a paragraph, it comes up. Yeah, so don't forget that part. Okay, good night. Have a great week. And what? Wednesday's Genresi, no mind training this week.